Juggles have become a staple part of Tekken 7 and many other fighting games. They are generally considered to be the most effective way to deal a large amount of damage to the opponent in a short amount of time. To put it simply, a juggle is the act of performing a combo on a mid-air opponent in a fighting game. The formula for a juggle can vary depending on the character and the intention of the juggle. Some characters may benefit from a different formula, or environmental factors may demand different formulas, but most of the time it's possible to identify a simple pattern. To start a juggle, you need to perform a launcher. A launcher is a move to place the character into a mid-air or airborne state. This doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be launched into the air with the move, and is more importantly related to the opponent's character's response to a follow-up, and being able to keep them airborne following this. With this in mind, there are moves that allow a guaranteed follow-up, but are not considered a launcher. A move may not launch the opponent normally, but with counter-hit properties, the move may become a launcher. Once the opponent has been launched, generally moves are used that we will consider filler. This may be a single hit, a connection of single hits, a string, or even multiple strings. As is possible, this filler should be high damage moves, for reasons that we will discuss shortly. The next step is performing the tailspin or screw. This is a particular move or string that leaves the opponent in a tailspin state, throwing them forward but allowing additional follow-ups. Moves that can cause a tailspin can be identified in the move list by an icon, as displayed in the video. This is suggestive of moves that will cause a tailspin on an airborne opponent, and does not refer to moves that can cause a tailspin on a character in a normal state, and in some situations, a move may cause a tailspin state on an opponent while in a normal state, generally when it's a counter hit. Following the tailspin, the next part of the formula is what we shall call the ender. The ender may be a powerful hit or string for damage, an option of using an ender for wall carry or okizeme, or perhaps even a combination of these. The intention of a wall carry would of course be to bring the opponent to the wall to allow the juggle to continue for more damage, and the intention of using an ender for okizeme would be to place the opponent into a mix-up afterward, potentially providing a much greater reward than if the ender were just an attempt for damage, but with the possibility of it being avoided. I mentioned earlier that the moves that precede the launcher should be high damage as possible. This is because of damage scaling. While the launcher will deal damage to the opponent as expected while they're in a normal state, whether it have a normal hit or counter hit properties, the follow-up moves while the opponent is airborne will receive damage scaling. The first hit while airborne will do 70% of the normal damage, then 50%, 40%, 30%. The scaling will stop at the 30% mark, meaning after the launcher, every hit after the fourth will deal 30% of the damage it would on an opponent in a normal state. Following a launcher, doing 3 attacks in the order of 10 damage, 10 damage, 25 damage would result in 22 damage in total due to scaling. If you did 3 attacks in the order of 25 damage, 10 damage, 10 damage, that would result in 26 damage, showing the benefit of using higher damage attacks earlier as is possible. Sometimes, this may mean using a tailspin very early or very late in a juggle. Another key element to discuss is the pushback of an opponent during a juggle. With more successive hits, the opponent will travel further and further away, making it more and more difficult to connect successive attacks. The only way to reset this is to take the opponent out of an airborne state. However, if they reach a wall, pushback will have no effect, and instead it's about connecting moves before the opponent falls down the wall. Character hurtboxes can come into play when performing juggles, and just because you can perform a particular juggle against one character doesn't always mean it's possible against another character. When learning or discovering juggles, it's a good idea to test them against characters with different proportions to make sure you are familiar with what to do in each matchup. As well as this, much of the time a higher or max damage juggle may be significantly more difficult to perform than another juggle, with only a margin of difference in the damage dealt. In friendly games, it's a good idea to challenge your inputs and muscle memory, but in a competitive sense, it's often smarter to opt for consistency over the potential to drop a great deal of guaranteed damage. Performing a juggle can be highly rewarding and satisfying for a player. With an understanding on how juggles work, Tekken 7 gives players the potential to create their own juggles much of the time, which can provide more enjoyment for people in practice mode and satisfaction in pulling them off in an actual match. I hope you have found value in the video and those to come as we explore more Tekken 7.